And so thank you all for joining us tonight. Want to welcome everybody and recognize that wherever we are gathered on the ancestral homes of the first peoples who are in these areas, Duwamish, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, Tulalip, and other tribes that managed these resources and lived in this area for millennia before our ancestors and our own selves arrived here. And I appreciate being able to take a moment before each of our meeting to recognize that we are all working towards making our land sustainable again. And right now we are living in a time of rapidly changing climate, and our systems for managing our communities are unsustainable. And I'm grateful to be working with everyone here to bring us back into a sustainable relationship with the world in which we live. So thank you all. Welcome to our October meeting of the Climate Action Committee for the City of Lake Forest Park. Sarah Phillips is with us tonight. Our wonderful chair is under the weather, so she will be attending, but resting as she attends because she's recovering from COVID. And I think Miriam's on her way, and Brian may or may not be able to attend remotely. And other than that, I think we are all present and accounted for. So thank you all very much for joining us. And also thank you, Corey, for making certain that we have our agenda and all materials ready and waiting for us. Has everyone had a chance to view the agenda? I'm going to share screen and put it up here so that we can review it quickly. The first item after welcome and introductions is adoption of agenda. Are there any guests present tonight?
We have one online.
Okay, well, then I would like to go around the, oh, we have everyone here. So this is a good time to go around with introductions. And I will start, and then after me, what I'd like to do is introduce Sarah, and then Tamara, Bella, Anna, and then I'll pick up again from there. So I'm Ann Udaloy. I live up in kind of the northwest corner of Lake Forest Park, professional hydrogeologist, vice chair, and I will facilitate this meeting. Sarah?
I'm Sarah, the chair of this group. I had a wonderful vacation, mask, no trouble on trains, museums, airplanes, and then came home and just was slammed with COVID. So the good news is I got it at home and I can be in my bed.
Tamara.
My name is Tamara Erickson. I've lived in Lake Forest Park since 2015, and I am passionate about seeing what I can do and what we can do as a city to help fight climate change.
Bella.
Hi, I'm Bella. I live in Lake Forest Park and I go to Shorecrest. And I have a climate justice club at my school, and yeah.
Anna, and then Jessica.
Hi, I'm Anna. I go to Blanchette High School, but I live in Lake Forest Park as well. And I'm the other one of the two high school representatives on the committee.
And I'm Jessica Cote. I'm a coastal engineer. I own Blue Coast Engineering, which is a business in Lake Forest Park, and live in Lake Forest Park. And I deal with climate change every day, and am a little nervous about the winter to come because we had a lot of coastal flooding and extreme storm events and extreme precipitation last year that kept my phone ringing, which I would prefer not to ring so much, honestly. So super interested in what we as a small city can do to help prevent some of those ongoing issues.
And what I'd like to do now is have the people who are attending in real life, starting with Corey, and just if you'd go around the table, please.
Work for the city of Lake Forest Park. I am Dana Campbell. I'm faculty at University of Washington Bothell, and I'm very eager to engage students in issues of climate change. Who we introduce ourselves to each other, or is it just us? Is there somebody different? There might be people. They're there today. Okay. So I'm Mimi Bertram or Miriam Bertram, and I am an oceanographer and an educator, and I work for the program on climate change at the University of Washington. And I teach a class with Dana at UW Bothell on climate once a year.
Hi, I'm Tracy Bertine. I'm on the council of Lake Forest Park. I'm also therefore the council liaison to this meeting.
I'm Matt Sun. I've lived in Lake Forest Park since 2021, and I am a pharmacist at Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, and I'm excited to join the committee to show up for our community.
Thank you all very, very much. So you had a chance to look at the agenda, I hope. Apologize, I just stopped sharing screen inaptly. This is the agenda. Are there any suggested revisions to this agenda? Is there any opposition to adopting this agenda?
No.
Any opposition? Any opposition to adopting the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted for the meeting. I'm sorry, was there an objection there at the last minute?
No objection. We were just explaining that you have to say that 3 times to follow Robert's rules.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm a Robert's Rules person, so I will ask 3 times, because if somebody wasn't paying attention, this gives them a chance to focus back in and raise their objection as they watch. So I will now move to review an adoption of the previous meeting minutes, as we do have a quorum. So I'm going to start with our hybrid meeting from August 10th, 2022. These were sent to you in your meeting materials. I will scroll through them somewhat slowly so everyone can kind of glance at them again and try to remember if there's anything that you would like changed, any edits that we would like to these meetings minutes. And if you would like me to slow down, please just let me know that. Again, this is the August meeting minutes. Are there any proposed revisions to the August meeting minutes? Are there any proposed revisions to the August meeting minutes? Is there any opposition to adopting these as the official meeting minutes? Any opposition to the adoption of the August meeting minutes? Any opposition to the adoption of the August meeting minutes? Hearing none, we've adopted the August meeting minutes. We'll now move to the September 6th meeting minutes. Again, these were in your packet that you received in advance of the meeting. I will scroll through them somewhat slowly. If you would like me to slow down further, please let me know. We heard from Deputy Mayor McCain from City of Kenmore. Are there any proposed changes to the September meeting minutes?
One.
Tracy?
Yeah, so thanks for reviewing them. And I don't know, should we put when people come and leave? I just wanted to ask, throw that out to the group and see if that's something.
You mean the committee members?
I think if they're committee members, that's useful information. If they're members of the public, it's members of the public are always free to come and go at their,
Not to call out Brian, but he's mentioned at the top of these minutes. And so that's why I wondered, that I had not seen that before, so.
Did that make us lose our quorum? 'Cause we had quorum for a little while and then we lost it, so that might be why it's
Okay,
relevant.
gotcha.
I think that's why it's kept it in. Yeah,
All right, that makes sense.
because normally, no, I don't think I would. I think that's probably I keep.
I forgot to put that here.
so is that a proposed revision, or shall we just leave the minutes as they say?
I withdraw it.
Thank you. So I will ask one more time, proposed revisions to the September meeting minutes. Is there any objection to adopting these minutes as written? Any objection to the adoption of the September meeting minutes as written? Any objection to the adoption of the September meeting minutes? Hearing none, we've adopted the September meeting minutes. We will now move to our next agenda item. Citizen comments. Have we any citizens joining us who would like to make a comment at this time?
We have one, so if you'd like to raise your hand for a comment, I'll allow you to speak.
I will stop sharing so that we can.
Okay, yeah.
Corey, I will need your help with this.
Yeah. Try.
I see that there's a hand raised, but I don't know how to recognize that person.
Future.
Ah,
Future now. See if we can.
Hello, can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Okay.
And I would very much appreciate it if you would share the proper pronunciation of your name so that I don't.
Yeah, I go by Shovik Roy Chaudhary.
Shovik Roy
Yes,
Chaudhary.
Chaudhary. Yes,
Chaudhary.
yes.
Thank you. Welcome to the meeting, and we'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you. I live on 155th Street, which is close downhill from Sheridan Market, if you guys recognize that. So I'd like to share my experience about a tree permit that was and us neighbors getting together. I think trees are very, very important for our climate, and I was actually looking forward to talking on the tree board meetings, but it has gotten cancelled this month as well as the previous month. So I'm chatting here. I think it's a very related topic. I can give you guys a little background on our experience. So what happened was one of the lots in our on our street got sold to an investor / owner of the new lot who wanted to chop down the remaining trees on that property. We neighbors actually did some digging and found that there used to be 11 trees on that lot, and surprisingly only 2 trees remained. And we did try to also understand like why were the details around the tree permit, and we found that the arborist report that was linked with the permit was bogus. It was not incomplete. And so we actually tried to hold the city accountable by filing an appeal, and we lost terribly. So apparently on the website for tree permits, it says that you require an arborist report. But when our appeal went to the hearing, we found that in the city code, in the city municipal code, there's no requirement as such. And it's solely on the planning commission's discretion on allowing anyone to cut any tree on their lot. So that was very, very surprising. And we also uncovered several other loopholes in our city code. For example, if the city grants a tree permit, the citizens have 14 days to form an appeal. However, the city allows the tree to be chopped down, even before citizens have a chance to appeal. So this catch-22, right? So we found a lot of issues in the tree code, and at the hearing there was certain things that we protections that we got, like for example the trees which are on the neighboring lots, they had to be protected, and any work in the critical root zone actually required the city arborist to come and review and be present here. However, we later found out that both the city arborist actually resigned from their job. So the city does not have a city arborist. So and the former city arborist who had filed the incomplete arborist report also left mysteriously. So I think there is a systemic problem that is happening in the city where we don't actually have a process to review tree permits systematically, and we don't have an arborist, so it's at the discretion of the planning department to allow every tree in the city to be cut down. And I think it's really terrible for our environment and climate. So just wanted to present that, and if anybody's interested, please feel free to reach out to me. My email address is my first name @gmail.com, and I'd be happy to share any details about this tree permit and our findings.
And that's a nice compressed 3-minute presentation. Thank you very much. So as I understand, your email is shavik@gmail.com.
Yes.
And I want to thank you very much for sharing this information with us, and also urge you to share it with our tree board.
So I did share it with the tree board, and the tree board was in support. However, what we found was that the tree board is just an advisory board. They cannot advise the planning department, and the planning department will not even listen to them, right? So although we had the support of the tree board, we had support from the Lake Forest Park Stewardship Foundation. We had nothing on the planning department, and we lost the fight. And the biggest loophole was that there is apparently no arborist report needed for the planning department to review any tree to be cut, which is a major loophole because the city's website says otherwise.
So I'd like to thank you. This committee is not in a position to take any action at this point in time, but this certainly does fit in with our overall discussion of how to manage the physical environment, because trees are an important part of managing temperature in our neighborhoods and controlling carbon. So that is a part of our overall picture of how we're going to be moving forward. And I thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Have we other Tracy?
Hi, and normally one does not address citizens' comments during this period, but
I apologize.
well, no, not a criticism for you, criticism of me, if anything, because I'm going to address Mr. Chowdhury's very significant concerns. At least two peripheral points are being addressed. One of them is that the tree board did recommend legislation to the council, which did subsequently approve it, to get rid of that weird loophole where you can chop down a tree during the appeal period. That was, terrible, and it's not going to help your tree, but it basically in the future will help. Secondly, we are trying to move our arborist position so it's closer to being full-time, so it'll be more attractive to more candidates. And so hopefully in the next budget, we'll be approving an increase in the percentage that the arborist is employed by the city, and therefore we'll be able to retain an arborist, because you're absolutely right. There really needs to be a report on that. So I'll take this offline and I'll send you an email later. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. With that, and seeing that there's no additional citizen input, I'm going to move to the next order of business, which is old business. And that includes reports from subcommittees. And as I recall, and hopefully you have all recently received an email from Corey with a PDF file showing the current mock-up of our Climate Action Committee Questionnaire. And I would ask our communications committee who's developing the questionnaire, Tamara and team, what I'd like to do now is move that to the top of our agenda, because I think it's pressing that we have comment and closure on this agenda topic. Without objection, I'd like to share my screen and ask Tamara to present. Tamara.
Yeah, so we did a soft release this past weekend. So I asked some community members to take a look at it and received some really great feedback. I was waiting for one other community member to send their comments to me, but they weren't able to get around to it. So I just sent a revised survey out.
Tonight? Ah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
okay. I will bring that one up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I will share screen. And here we go. So Tamara, if you and your committee would like to lead discussion on this, our goal is to have a survey that we can share with our community to start pulling together information about where we are as a community, and also use it as educational outreach. And with that, Tamara, if you could just carry forward.
Yeah. So we have, at the top is our Climate Action Committee banner. That looks great. And then we just have a short introduction about climate change and who we are, the Climate Action Committee, what our goal is. And we also include a note in here that most of our city's electricity comes from hydroelectric energy, because I think it will impact the way people answer the questions on the survey. And then, so the first question, what is your connection to Lake Forest Park? So we thought it'd be interesting to see if people, own or rent their home, or if they work, or if maybe they, just love coming to the farmer's market, or they're in town visiting a friend, or they live in Shoreline, which is the second question that we have here, because we definitely want to differentiate between the people who live in Lake Forest Park, but I also want to know where other people who might be interested in filling out this survey do live. And just a general question, how concerned are you about climate change? Because something that was interesting in the Kenmore survey was I asked a similar question, and it was not, most people were not very concerned. Most people answered that they were somewhat concerned. And then the next question, so which strategies should the city prioritize to reduce our contribution to climate change? We just have the high, medium, and low. And then we also have an option for people to kind of opt out of that one. So I do not have a final opinion on this issue. And then it's kind of a list of the different things that we can do to minimize our individual contribution to climate change. That was interesting to break it out in this way. So do you drive an electric vehicle? Yes, because, or no, because. And then we have all the different options. So bike instead of drive, walk instead of drive, take public transit instead of drive, have only electric appliances in your home, and then anything else not mentioned above.
Can you go back? And what is the question there? Let's see. There are a variety of things we can do to minimize. Okay, thank you.
Then we have the question, if money were not an issue, what would you do to minimize your individual contribution to climate change? And is there anything else besides money holding you back? Do you volunteer in any groups or organizations whose primary goal is to address climate change? If so, which groups? And then where do you currently find useful climate change information and guidance? I'm interested in learning more about how to, get more information on climate change, minimize my contribution, adapt, advocate for climate change policies. And this last one was based on feedback from someone who said, I would like to volunteer with your climate action committee. Are there going to be any opportunities for me to volunteer? And in what ways have you been affected by climate change? Feeling uncomfortably hot or cold in my home, seeing changes in the water levels, difference in plants and animal life. So we changed it to noticing, yeah. Thanks, Anne. Then experiencing negative effects of smoke from forest fires. And then do you have any friends and or family who have been adversely affected by climate change? If so, how? It's just interesting to hear personal stories from people who may or may not live in Lake Forest Park, but just for people to kind of personalize the effects of climate change. And what are you doing as a result of the changing climate? Limiting my activities outdoors because of smoke. Started changing my landscape to native plants, planting trees, adding, AC units and or heat pumps. I'm not sure if we want to add something like adding air filters as well. And then something else that we had talked about is, do we want to break out, like if we want to do the AC, like central AC or, just like portable AC units. I don't know if that makes a difference in the information that we want to receive. And then if money were non-issue, what would you do to prepare for the effects of climate change? And is there anything else besides money holding you back? And our city is striving to minimize our community's contribution to climate change and help its constituents prepare for the effects. Do you think our city should make the below actions a high, medium, or low priority? So transition to electric vehicles in the city's fleet, establish a library for people to check out electric battery-powered landscaping equipment, install charging stations, partner with other cities to influence climate-friendly policy changes, build more bike lane sidewalks, provide more incentives, require all new construction to have non-gas appliances and or heating, heat pumps, and require that every homeowner selling their home provide potential buyers an energy audit that defines household energy uses. Establish an electric powered community shuttle, which was something that someone had mentioned that, I guess years ago, there was a shuttle, like an LFP shuttle that would take people like to the town center and other places. I thought that would be really cool if we had something like that in our community, especially on farmers market days and other times. And then what questions or comments do you have about the development of our city's climate action plan? And we have the demographic information, name, age, gender identity, address, how many people live in your home and what are their ages? And would you like to join the mailing list? They can provide their email address. And you can drop off your completed survey at the front desk of City Hall. And then we'll also provide a QR code for the online version of the survey and a link to our website.
So I'm noticing that there's a small amount of editing just
Mhm.
technical editing, you know,
Yep.
extra spaces, get the numbers right, get the page flow okay.
Mhm. Yeah, all that good stuff you did to the previous version, Anne.
And we'll just do it and do it each time.
Thanks.
Has it gotten substantially longer since we looked at it before?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is longer.
Well, the last one was 5 pages. After it was tightened up to 5 pages, and this is now 6 pages. It rolls on to the 7th with the you can drop it off, but with a little bit of nattering, we'll be able to pull it back onto 6 pages, I'm sure.
Well, we're gonna have to put this into SurveyMonkey too, so I don't necessarily know what that'll look like. Is a paper copy being distributed? Or is, how is it being given out?
So we're gonna have, so you have the paper copies. So here, most people will probably want to fill it out online, but there are some people who will want to fill it out on paper. So that's why we have the QR code. So when we have our table at the farmer's market, we'll have the paper copies of the survey and, you know, also something with the QR codes that people can, you know, link the survey and then, you know, email it to themselves. And, you know, same for the event at Third Place Commons in November. And then we also talked about having a link to the survey in our December newsletter for the city. And we can also discuss other ways that we want to promote it. Other bulletin boards that we can put it on, you know, with the PTAs and other venues, social media too.
Because of the length, I think I just make sure that we think that the most important questions that we want answers to are towards the top. And maybe that's already the case. But I suspect that there might be, we might not get as many answers. There might be some fatigue as you go through it. No offense, you've taken a lot of, I mean, so much, you know, feedback, and I know revamped this many times, and I'm not suggesting we revamp it. I mean, I think let's give it a try, but I do think that it feels long. That's all.
Yeah. Think there's any questions that we could omit?
I think we should just give people an idea of how long they might expect it to take, so that they're not surprised when they open it.
Yeah.
And that they allow themselves that amount of time.
Yeah, and like I see at the top of surveys that you fill out, this will take you, you know, should take you approximately 10 minutes to fill out. So we'd always have one of us time ourselves to see how long it takes us to fill it out.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Are there still the tables? I haven't been to the farmer's market this year except for like twice at the beginning. Last year there was like a tent that had like tables in it. Do we still have those, or are people just going to be like standing with clipboards?
They don't have-
I think we'll have our own table, right? Is that your impression?
We'll have a table, but is there going to be like a separate table for people to like sit while they're doing the survey, or is it like a
No,
standing
They
situation?
don't have the community like area out this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so people can, I guess, take it with them and then drop it off again if they want to fill out the paper version.
Corey, can they put it in the bill paying box?
Yeah, there's just not a lot of room there, but I mean, how many people are gonna have paper copies of this?
Yeah, I think that's right.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe in the library, the library. Yeah, we could ask. Yeah. I had a couple questions. One was, and I don't know, maybe you can share your screen again about the questions. So I'm just wondering what the answers for some of those questions, what the value is to you. Like,
So if you can I'll start at the beginning, and why don't you let me know which question you would like me to stop at?
I guess some of these ones here where. So we're trying to get an idea, is this to gather data on how many people have these different things? Are we trying to get an idea of the person who's filling out the survey? Or what is that question 5? For
I think
example,
it's both. So I think, just to know how many people have it. And then also, I think it's really interesting to hear their motivations behind it. So let's say someone for driving an electric vehicle, yes, because, it's really important to me to not drive, a gas powered car, or no, because, it's too expensive, or no, because, in my case, I would probably say, we have 2 cars that are paid off, and once one of them dies, then I'm going to buy an electric car. So I think it's interesting to hear why, like for bike instead of drive. I would say, personally, I would say no, because we have a lot of steep hills. I don't like driving or riding my bike, up the hills. So I think it's interesting to hear, they'll say like for take public transit instead of drive. I personally will drive to, Northgate and then take public transit downtown. And that's primarily, honestly, because I don't want to deal with parking. But that's still a reason why I do it. So I think it's interesting to hear why people do these things. I think it will help us by understanding people's motivations to help us in drafting the plan.
yeah, okay, I agree, that's great.
So I'm going to scroll a little further. And this will,
What does 8 tell us?
Or like 7, do we need that information?
Right, okay.
Um,
Let's have-
So do you volunteer in any groups? I think it's interesting just to see how active people are in climate change, like if they are involved in any groups or if they volunteer with any groups. I think it kind of helps us gauge the level of participation of our community in, fighting climate change.
and we may learn of groups that are active in our community that we don't yet know about because we're not members, but they're groups of active people who are working to address these issues, and we just haven't connected yet.
So in 8, my thought was, what if everybody checks off TV? What will that help us do?
So, I just think it's interesting to hear if people are getting it from TV or if they're getting it from social media, because if most people are getting it from social media, then I think that's a good way that we can kind of target social media for our presence. If it's, books, if it's school, then maybe we can focus more on school. Just kind of how, people get that information can kind of tell us where we can focus our efforts.
I totally
so
agree
we
with that. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Maybe we just narrow it down to social media and school, since I don't think we have a lot of control over the other ones. So it's almost like you just need social media, and then with a space for which website, and then school, and then other. Because honestly, if they mark a lot of TV or radio, we're not going to basically suddenly make ads for this sort of thing.
Yeah, because we're not really going to be able to target those, but I guess if we don't include them, then it could, or I guess maybe then people just put that in the other optional if it's not included there.
So friends and family is an interesting one, because if they get it from talking to other people, then we know by being present
Yep.
and talking,
Yep.
we're gonna have an impact.
Yeah, keep that one
That
too.
one.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see that.
So what I'm hearing is that what you would like is something social media
What site? Or what platform?
something like that.
Sure.
And then I think they were saying drop out newspapers, TV, radio, documentary.
Right.
Books.
Drop out everything that we can't do anything about. Schools we can, right? Because we can always go into the schools. And friends and family are great because basically, again, as Nina was saying, you know, we encourage people to get out there and talk to your neighbors or whatever, right?
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is this entire row up till schools gets dropped out?
I have a question.
Yeah,
If you're not a student filling out the survey and you don't use social media, then okay, for instance, like my dad, he learns a lot about climate change and he tries to like get a lot of information on it, and he listens to podcasts and NPR, and that's where he gets all of his information. And I know that like we can't influence the podcast or radio world, but he doesn't have social media and he doesn't go to school. So what would he say if he was filling that
you
out?
would fill in other,
Okay.
and you fill it in with NPR, podcasts, public TV.
Okay.
I mean, in fact, we don't
We
put the word
still have
optional,
these two other categories down here.
right? We don't even have to put the word optional in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pull that out.
It is a good point, though, that, you know, social media, you know, there are people who find things like on the internet, but not social media. So it's like, we have a website, right? So maybe it should say internet/social media. So like what site?
Yeah.
I like it.
Why don't we just have one other student, right?
So what I'm getting now is that I still take out this section here.
Right.
And social media, internet,
Right.
websites.
And then make the which a little bit clearer by saying which site or platform.
But does that mean like we're including like the Seattle Times as social media? Like
Yes.
That's an internet website.
That's an internet
right?
website, yeah.
Yeah.
And we may want to have more space to answer this.
What about just, and it's okay if not, but what about just having like the one above it where it's just a bunch of lines where you can list all the places instead of having like two boxes and then lines? Does it make sense? I don't know if I phrased that.
It
in a good
does.
way.
I think the concept of using these tick boxes is to get people to think, oh yeah, I do use the web. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, it's as much as anything a prompt of, yeah, we know you're probably on the internet somehow. Where?
Yeah.
But I think you're right in that this has to be a longer opportunity.
Yeah.
And I would just do one other, make the line longer as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one more thing. I'm sorry. We don't learn about climate change in school.
What's up? We don't? That's
No.
Yeah, I second that.
Unless you're actively getting involved in stuff like this, or you're taking AP environmental science, and even then they don't like explicitly kind of state it. They talk about it in like a scientific way, but they're not, the textbook is old, so it's not.
Yeah, and say there's like no influence you can have on your elementary.
You've got two teachers. here.
Like, even I wouldn't.
You
like
probably, you have a lot more freedom than public school.
Right.
You know.
But that's why it's a generic school, right? It doesn't mean high school necessarily. It could be
Yeah.
college.
Yeah. And my kids learn about climate change in their school.
How about
Public school.
government, some kind of government organization or social organizations that are
Give an example.
well, I don't know, but could they learn about it through?
Can do that.
We asked them about the clubs that are involved. Yeah, but a different question. Yeah. So they was sort of getting that idea. So they are also learning there, but yeah. Yeah, it could be through activities that they're doing.
When, can they just put that in the other?
Yeah.
For school, should we do school/college?
Sure.
Oh, there's also museums, right? Informal ed. So museums and stuff like that where you go. But if we,
And other is a really broad category for exactly that reason, because then we don't have to predict every
yeah,
possible
yeah.
resource in our community.
And I think we're going to take out newspaper too.
Right.
So, yeah. Podcasts are an interesting one, right? Because you could create a podcast. And it seems like a lot of people listen to podcasts.
But are
So,
we
well, I don't know.
podcasts?
I don't know. But you could.
I-
Podcast.
Podcast.
So one thing I want to, I don't want to, we don't have an infinite amount of time and we do have an infinite amount of thought.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of move through this assiduously and get it to a point where we can return it to committee for final polish.
Right.
That we've captured most of the comments, but there's a limit to how much we can correct every typo and finesse every question. So we're at question 8. Can I move forward a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. Interested in more, and yeah, we'll do some basic standardization stuff like capitalize all bullets kind of thing. And we'll bring these up so that it's all paginated nicely at the end. Anything else on question 9 here? I am interested in learning more about how to. Okay, question 10. In what ways have you been affected?
But actually, for question 9, so what would we do based on the responses there? Would we provide them more information or? Yeah, that one, then you know what kind of education to push out. We know where to put our efforts.
Well, this would provide some guidance as to like our town hall, our environmental town hall next year.
Okay.
And this is how do we follow up?
Right.
Okay.
Who do we invite to speak?
Okay, question 10. In what ways have you been affected? And can we take the word optional out for all these others? Because
Yeah.
And I would
is that
just,
okay?
yeah, and I would just keep one option or one other, so it doesn't look like it's limiting the option.
Sure. What we can do is we can have it be a nice long.
Yeah.
So the adversely affected one, the next question. Are we looking for like people?
Now that seems like one that
Like people near us, or we're talking about families far away? Are we
Yeah.
talking-
I'm wondering about that one too, 11. Like if I was to cut one, that's kind of one that I feel like is not going to give us a whole lot of data or information. And I don't think they're going to tell us a whole long story, on a survey.
like it just
So I'm
seems
just-
like too personal for survey.
You could even just have that be one of the check boxes in 10 is like have family or friends who have
Been
you know,
affected by
been
it.
affected.
Right, right. Good point.
Or been, yeah,
Doesn't
personally
record
impacted.
that, just
How about that?
hurricane, I would check that box.
How about that? If we add that as a checkbox up above in 10 and then don't elicit the story. Although people would have an opportunity to write about it if they wanted to add information.
I think
mean,
that's a great idea.
stories are out there anyway, right? So we need to hear people's stories really to inform us.
So I think not in this instrument. I mean, it'd be a good thing in other things like town halls, but they need to not hear.
Yeah, where we can relate to what they're saying or,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't seem like it would help.
I agree. I think it's more like that's like a secondary thing. Like if we can get some people who are interested in having, you know, an interview, for example, to talk more about it or something, you know, that would be the time to hear the stories. Or if we did a podcast. Ooh.
Right. Connect it out to people rather than us here.
I mean, this is basically a podcast. They're recorded, posted.
We don't have any
So
in the background.
People might not listen for them.
can I get a quick census of the group?
Yeah.
You can see the revision I've made here. I've added the phrase, my family or friends have been adversely affected by climate change. And then the proposal is to include that, but then delete question 11. Is there objection to this? Any objection? Okay. Okay, our next one now is the new question 11. What are you doing as a result of the change in climate? And I think we just use this as the same bullet.
And then also take out optional and just add the one line instead of
Sure.
2.
And we'll finish nattering all this later. Any other changes on 11? Moving on to 12. If money were not an issue, what would you do to prepare for the effects of climate change?
So we might not need all those lines.
It'll go in the survey.
That gets into the nattering. Because what we can do, for example, is if we natter one line out and then that all fits on a page, and then this fits nicely here.
It does, but you could also take out all, like, just put in 2 lines so that people don't feel like they have to write a book. And if they want to write a book, then they could do it, you know.
And we may rearrange questions or something to do the formatting, but I think it's important once we get to something like question 13 here, that we have as much as possible of this on a single page.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the only thing that will slow you down even more in filling out this survey is having to figure out what question you're answering. So I agree, Dana, and we will look for opportunities to clean this up because that is a long paragraph.
And getting to question 13, this seems like
Make sure that's the right number. Yes, okay, sorry.
like as Jessica was saying, you know, this seems like a pretty high priority question to be
Yeah.
this late. And, you know, we kind of talked about how questions 7, you know, 7 and 8, you know, maybe those should be moved lower and 13 should be moved higher.
Yeah, this kind of seems like the crux of what we want to know in some ways.
So I'm going to mark that high priority. Is that general agreement? Because that's really one of the crucial things we're trying to get at as a committee is what will the community currently support, and in what areas do we have like no support for city action? Okay, so with that, in mind, and with the idea being that we're going to spend a little time going back and reprioritizing everything, not everything, but just identifying the other highest priority questions. Are there other comments to question 13, the content?
So can we provide subsidies and incentives? We can make recommendations to the city, right?
I'm sorry, I could not quite hear that.
The city can provide subsidies.
I mean, in theory.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, our budget basically is already hot, so.
Yeah, so
Federal money, isn't there the possibility?
Right.
there's other
So here's one of the
And
fun
would
things
we
that
provide
this is one of the fun things I learned about running a city, is the fact that, yes, there are pots of money at the state level, federal level, heck, even at the county level. The problem is that, as Corey will tell you, somebody has to write the grant, somebody has to administer the grant, as you all in the academia know. And so the problem is that we don't have a dedicated grant writer, nor a grant administrator at the city. So, you know, it has its own costs. And when you're a small city, it's just something you can't afford to discover. So we just can't go out for every single grant we want to get. We gotta be real smart about it. So yeah, I agree. If we could find one-stop shopping where we could write a grant, get, say, subsidies for e-pumps and e-chargers and e-vehicles for that matter, that'd be awesome. I just haven't seen anything like that.
So do we want to have that in here as almost like?
Won't everybody check high? Everybody wants more money for doing.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Folks, I need to pull this in a little bit because I feel like we're on the one hand discussing what the content of this survey is going to be, and on the other hand discussing whether or not we should have a grant writer at the city level.
Sure.
Yeah,
fine.
I'm having trouble.
I think, are we
connecting this in.
discussing whether we should have that provide more incentives as subsidies in there at all?
Maybe
Isn't that what you're asking?
incentives and maybe not subsidies, because pulling people in and kind of tantalizing them with an idea that we can't really do anyway, it seems like that's not.
How about
I would argue
inform,
that if you're
inform people of
designing your
existing
survey-
subsidies?
if you're designing your survey, eliminating all the possibilities that you don't want to do, then you're kind of biasing them. You know, if
Yeah.
people put that, then maybe the committee's time should be spent writing that grant.
And at a minimum, we can inform people of existing.
Right.
Yeah,
That's an absolute minimum that I have always considered a major goal of our committee, is identify and inform.
Okay, so maybe it could also include then inform or
Yeah.
provide more information about incentives and subsidies. Or ways that we could apply them, I guess, or something.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully, like, maybe down the line, there'll be like a King County program that,
Yeah.
you know, residents can apply for to change stuff over to, you know, like.
Right, so they would want information about that, but that's not for us providing
Incentives.
the incentive.
yeah, I like the idea of just incentives rather than incentives and subsidies, but yeah, I think
I
that,
mean, an incentive could include a subsidy.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't need the word subsidy, which everybody's gonna focus on, like, oh, that sounds good.
So are we talking about provide or inform residents about?
I mean, we might provide some
No, inform is fine.
incentives.
At this point, inform is fine because we can do that. Right, I mean, not to, you know, deny Matt's point, but I think basically, you know, if we write provide, I think that starts going in a weird place. Yeah.
So are we stating that that's not something that we would do or we could do?
At the city level?
Mhm.
Providing subsidy where we don't have funds.
Yeah, not the next 2 years anyway.
Well, isn't this more of a long-term plan?
Sure. I mean, that's possible. So if you want to somehow imply that it's not immediate gratification, yeah.
Do you want to do both?
Yeah, we could do both.
And I'll show you what that looks like. And then we can see if there is citizen support for that, because if there is, then, I think Matthew's got it right exactly. Then that's a direction for, okay, let's find those people and have them help us write those grants,
Like it.
apply for those
I
grants.
recognize it's gonna be a lot harder than that. I just don't want it to be like a foregone conclusion
Yeah.
before we even gather the.
Except that I also feel like, who's not gonna say yes?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I'll
Like,
be-
It would be
and then we get this idea that that's high priority rather than other.
Right,
We
question.
can't do everything.
It's okay if they say fine, we can't do it. Okay, at least we can say, everybody wants, we can tell the city, everybody wants the. We need to pay attention.
Right.
We can't necessarily do something.
The broader problem with this question is, who wouldn't mark high on all of those things, right?
I think some people are gonna mark high because they're gonna think, oh, if we're providing subsidies, that means my taxes are gonna go up. Not everyone's gonna
Right.
put high on that. but-
Okay, all right, fair.
But we're not gonna raise taxes, right? We're getting them through other means, like writing grants. So
We're
if that's the
asking,
case, maybe we wanna ask them. do
Hang
you
on.
want us to look into grant writing or something
I
like
don't think
that.
we're promising to do anything. We're
Yeah.
just asking people what they think.
What they're prioritizing.
We're not saying we can do that. We just want to know.
we're not identifying a method for achieving this goal.
But why do we wanna know it then if that's not what we're gonna do anyway?
Well, the east side cities got together with heat pumps and they identified a series of, and they had a big program about implementation of heat pumps. They got a list of preferred providers and those preferred providers said they would give folks a deal. That's a subsidy, right?
So that's the kind of thing that is going to be hard to do at the city level, but if we branch out and involve more members of our community, like Shoreline to Woodinville, we could certainly do. So I guess my question is, I have heard questions about how we would use the data if we got a really strong, robust response. And I would urge us to consider that question if we get that response. Because that's how we unlock our creativity.
Sounds good.
So I'm willing to take a straw poll. Well, I shouldn't say I'm willing to. I think it makes sense, given the level of discussion we've had, to take a straw poll. I think everyone was happy to have a discussion of existing incentives and subsidies, but on this specific question here, provide incentive subsidies for people and businesses to transition. What I'd like to do is just take a straw poll. All those who would like to include this in the survey, please raise your hand either electronically or manually. All those who would like to include this question, please raise your hand.
You see us?
Okay. I see a plurality. And anyone who is opposed to this question or abstains. Okay, so we certainly, so that says that we have a strong majority in favor of retaining the question. So we'll move on from there. Other questions that we would like to include, modify, or remove in this section? So again, we've got our transitioning city fleet, tool libraries, charging stations, partnering with cities. Many of these would be challenging to accomplish, but we can at least see if there's a base level of support for it.
Can cities require codes of construction like that?
Yeah, we can require codes of new construction. City of Shoreline and City of Seattle have already established in their code that there may be no additional residential natural gas
At the city level.
No,
at the
no,
city level.
no, be careful. It's not quite that way. I know we're slammed for time, but yeah, leave the question in, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because we can push the
It's-
state on that, yeah.
There's a challenge, but it's actually, there's very little of the city that is on natural gas as it is. So But yes, it can be done through city code. And, okay, any further questions on our question number 13 here?
The two others?
The two others. This is one where we might want two others.
Okay.
And it fills the page nicely.
Drop optional then.
It just looks
Yep,
like.
I'll drop optional.
Quitting now.
Yeah. No.
And we'll format later. Okay, so now question 14. Questions, comments about our city climate action plan. We don't actually have a climate action plan. So this was a question I had when I reviewed it is, if somebody asked me to comment on the climate action plan, I'd be hard pressed.
It says the development of our city's climate
Oh,
action
okay.
plan.
How about questions, comments, suggestions, or questions, suggestions?
Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. Then basic demographics, name, age, gender identity, address, how many people live in your home and the ages. And this probably has to be longer.
This gender identity mapping.
It's just interesting to know the breakdown of people. If you get a lot more people who identify as women than men, then maybe we need to do a better job targeting the men in our community.
So we're gonna connect these demographics with the answers to their other questions.
If the data are available, then yes, it would be interesting to know the difference between the answers between the 70-year-old community and the teenage community. I'd be fascinated to see the difference.
Yeah.
Well, also, and the point that I think was the Tamara you made, that if the split's 90-10 men, women, men, yeah, we might need to like revisit how we are handing the survey out or whatever.
You mean the number of respondents?
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than the answers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if, yeah, independent of that.
Yeah, or if we're getting only 65 and up.
Right.
people or something.
Right.
And look at this, we're already back onto 6 pages. Told you we could do it. So with that, I believe this will go back to the committee for final proofreading, and then we'll, again, take this out and give it a trial run and see what kind of information we get back from it. I mean, this is our first effort at surveying the community, not our last. So.
And when you say it's to go back to the committee for final proofreading, are you saying that we're going to table this for next month and then approve it then?
Actually, my preference, and I apologize for my bad wording, is to approve this in substance with the understanding that it will go through a final proofreading step before it's printed.
Sounds good.
So with that, I would appreciate a motion to approve this draft as revised.
Move to approve.
And
Was that?
We have a motion by Dana and a second by Matt.
Thank you very much. Discussion to the motion. Is there, does anyone want to discuss this motion? Hearing no request for discussion, I'll ask, is there any opposition to the motion? Any opposition to accepting this, understanding that there's a final proofreading step? Any opposition? Hearing no opposition, this is approved pending final approved, period, with the understanding that it will be proofread and then issued and can be used next weekend. Thank you all very much. It's And with that, it's 8:15. Yay. And I'd like to ask if there are other subcommittees that would like to report.
My subcommittee has not met again because we have been just a little too much going on this month. So, and I still need to invite Matt. So we still have work to do, but not that we would have had time to talk about much right now anyway. So I am curious before we go on. So did we talk at all about the picnic in the park? And we did get some good
That's-
feedback. And,
That's the next agenda topic.
sorry. Okay.
So data committee met, we're making steady progress, but nothing new to report. Any other committees? Then we'll move to our next topic, which is other new business. And the first is the farmer's market booth and picnic in the park recap. So let's hear the folks who attended the picnic. Please tell us.
Many stickies fell off. Don't.
Maybe stickies fell off, but I don't know if you can see this on the back table.
I have the pictures I can send out.
Did you say 30 stickies fell off?
Not many,
Yeah.
many along.
Many.
But we got at least 45 people visiting the booth, so it's pretty good in that regard.
That's good.
Yep.
Yeah, that's nice.
And most of them were from the city. There were quite a few from, of course, Seattle and Shoreline, but nevertheless, it was a good attendance. We got some good information about what people are concerned about. They're pretty much concerned about everything, so at least the ones that visited our booth. So it was good to see that heightened level of awareness, at least. So.
I think to note about the earlier citizens comment too, that there's something we also heard from at the farmer's market, actually from several other citizens about trees and about sort of the lack of enforcement of having to replace trees. Well, I know it's required in the permit because we've gotten a permit to take a tree down. It's not enforced, and so a lot of interest in how do we improve on that as a city to make sure that those trees are being replaced. And there were quite a few younger folks there who were very verbal and very elementary school aged kids who were really interested in participating and taking the survey and contributing. So that might just be something in the future. It could be a good way, depending on what we get back out of our next survey, to maybe try to go into the elementary school and try to do a survey there or in one of the classrooms or something, because using kids to pressure their parents sometimes is a good way to get things done.
PTA is always a good start.
Yeah.
Does already happen? No. Okay. I was like, I go to the farmer's market every week and I didn't see it.
So farmers market, what have we got set up for the farmers market? Corey, you had made arrangements for us to have a table?
No, this was Sarah, I think, organized that, but we got it moved to the 16th next Sunday. I won't be able to attend, but I can provide you guys everything you'll need, so we can talk about what you guys want to provide and who and all that. But
So yeah, I'd like to know who will collaborate to staff a table at farmers market this Sunday. Matt, Tracy,
Yeah, next
Great.
Sunday.
okay.
Sunday the 16th.
And Sarah, I see Sarah's hand up. Good. We assume she'll be up. And Anna. And
I have a question. I heard next Sunday, like Sunday the 9th, or Sunday the following Sunday after that,
16.
the 16th.
okay,
okay.
sorry. So not the 9th, the week after this coming week.
Yep.
Okay. And who is my lead organizer for this activity?
I don't know. I can try to
sounds like Matt is collaborating, Matt, Sarah. Sarah, is your hand up for helping to lead the organization of that? And Tamara?
I can help plan it.
Great. So the team that will be pulling that together will be Sarah, Tamara, Matt, and Tracy. And you have the names of our other volunteers. Pretty much you can tap anybody who's here. And I think it's going to be a big clipboard exercise as we're trying to get people to fill out surveys and inform people about it. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to reach out and inform the community that we exist and let them know what we're working on.
So
And
Cory,
this is Jessica. I unfortunately am not available that day, so
That's
you
fine.
cannot have me.
Yeah.
And do we have a list of the people who said they were available to participate?
Bella,
Everyone. but-
Dana,
And.
Sarah, Tracy, me. Looked like Miriam. Mimi, are you available?
Maybe.
ish.
Maybe.
Ish.
Yes.
Matthew, Matt, and Tracy. And let's see, Anna and Jessica are both out of pocket that day. Is that correct?
No, Anna's available. I'm
Yeah.
just not available.
Anna
Yeah,
is
I'm available.
Great,
Um,
fantastic.
My experience with the farmer's market is we should be in shifts. It's a long time to be there otherwise.
Yep,
And probably 2 shifts will be, so.
that sounds good.
Also, we should probably meet Cory on Friday, right? The Friday before.
Yeah.
Yep.
Want to make sure that the survey is ready. We have the QR codes all working.
Yeah.
Yep, we'll have copies of the survey. The QR codes will be working. We'll have clipboards. We'll have some chairs. Says your aging vice chair.
Are we allowed to have chairs?
Yeah, they have a couple of chairs to booth. Yeah,
And are those gonna go too? Do you guys,
if you want.
yeah, what do you guys want something like an exercise or I can do the coloring stuff again, or I can give you guys tote bags to give out to.
That'd be great.
Um,
Yeah, the coloring, at the picnic in the park, coloring was big yet.
yeah, it draws the parents. Then you get them for a moment or two.
Well, if we've got 10-minute survey to fill out, we're gonna occupy the kids for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So we better have
That makes sense.
some toys and drawing.
Yeah.
Chalk, lots of chalk.
What about like the seed balls? Or the seed bombs? I mean, if we wanted to set up like a little station where people could, I don't know how big our table is, if we would have room for that. But that's something that could keep the
that's
kids entertained.
That's something we might wanna ask the farmer's market, because they are a little like touchy on providing anything that someone else provides or sells, so. We can ask Amy about that one.
Yeah, and non-food items too, I think. Yeah, do
So,
you want to, you ask Amy about that one, Corey?
Yeah.
If we could make them and or just give them out? Or have the kids make them, or if we could just give them out?
Sarah, your hand is up?
No, it's not lower.
Oh, okay, I will.
What is it that you're asking, Tamara, that would be made?
Seed
Seed
bombs, yeah, so it's where you just take like some native seeds and you take some like soil material and clay and just kind of make a little ball, and then you can like stick it in the ground. You can have native seeds come up, native plants.
Isn't this the wrong time to plant them?
There was a booth
So
a couple weeks ago that was selling those.
Yeah, fall is actually, it is a good time to plant them. Just plant them in the ground now and then they'll come up in the spring.
But if it's a product that's for sale at the market, then that's
won't
gonna
work.
be a
Yeah.
non-starter. So
I'll check with Amy.
Okay.
Bella, your hand is
Also,
up?
yeah, my club made those last year. So if it does end up working out, I have some people who can help because they kind of take like, they do take like a minute to make. So I can help with that.
Yeah, and we gave them out at the picnic in the park and the kids were excited about them.
I think if we could do it as an activity that the kids can make while their parents are filling out the survey, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But
Is it messy? Do they have to have wipes for after?
We couldn't hear you.
She's asking about
Um,
mess and like, would they need wipes then? Like,
we can provide wipes. I have many containers of wet wipes at home.
So I'm going to ask that the folks, it sounds like Sarah's checking with Amy to find out whether it can be done, and we still have 10 days to figure out how to move this forward. So we have a team identified to lead this task, and I assume there'll be a follow-up email with information about logistics coordination and what we can and cannot do. With that, any further recap for the picnic in the park, or further information about the, I think we better move on because we're now at 8:25. And we can do fine details on organization in the next week or so and be ready for a week from Sunday. Then our last item on the agenda was trainings.
And so we have on November 12th, we have reserved for the Third Place Commons to present the emissions data to the city. Do we have that? I thought we should have it back by now.
Have we got anything from K4C on that?
Tracy's hand.
Tracy.
Yes, at long freaking.
Woohoo!
Yes. So Sarah's gonna be very happy about this. Here is the drawback. There are 3 tools. 2 of them are Excel spreadsheets that are very fancy, and I haven't figured out how it all works yet either, but it should be pretty straightforward. The other, which requires a piece of software called Microsoft Power BI, which I've never used before in my life. And it's a visualization tool, which is pretty powerful. However, I can't even get it to run on my computer nor my city computer. So far it's working on the Public Works Director's computer only, as far as I know. So I've got to get that worked out. Our IT person is out this week, so it'll probably be next week before we can use that tool. Nevertheless, I'm going to ask Corey to send the, did you get all 5 documents, or did you just get the 3?
Or what? The,
That Matt Herrick at K4C sent.
I think this is the 3.
Okay, I got all 5, so I'll send those to you to distribute them. There's basically 3 tools, and then there's 2 fairly lengthy PDFs on what these tools mean. Yeah. And we'll get that sent out to all of you.
I just worry about sending stuff that's not published yet. I don't know.
I always figure that basically you get it from a public official, it's pretty much
Yeah.
public, right?
Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, all right. Yeah, and there's nothing secret here. I don't think they're gonna change it. So,
Repeat the name of that Microsoft product. Microsoft
Power BI.
B as in boy,
E as in boy,
I as in information.
right?
So for this November 12th event, is it you guys presenting? Wait, what?
I'm not sure what we're doing. This is the first I've heard of it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is back to me. We had talked about wanting to do something about the emissions study. And because we wanted to do some public education that created a common understanding of what the baseline was. And our notion was that the county, the K4C would have that information for us. So we have scheduled essentially a town meeting on what Lake Forest Park emissions are. The notion would be it's mostly a presentation, and then I'm hoping Jessica, who said she'd done lots of these presentations, would work with me in terms of sort of figuring out then how you both do the presentation, and then if there's a possibility of breakout, people working together on a team.
And
Sure.
also to advertise the survey as well. So
Of course.
yeah, no, I'd be happy to help you with that, Sarah. And we're going to do this all in person.
Apparently. in, what they said was, would do it in person unless COVID comes back, roaring back, which I would say it has, but.
Okay.
So I wanted to show you this just to see what some of the stuff looks like. I'm supposed to give a presentation on the 13th of this month to a working group of King County electeds, including our county executive, which is making me a little nervous. So I wanted to run this quickly by you to see basically the thrust that I was going to go with and get feedback. Obviously, we have a very short period of time, so I'll run through this, okay? So the charge to me was, how is Lake Forest Park going to use this greenhouse gas emissions inventory tool that the county is providing? So can you go to the next one? Yeah. The point is basically, I'm going to reference that we have a 2008 plan that basically looked at the years 2002 and 2007 in terms of emissions by the both the community and the city. Next slide. I don't have any graphics. This is very text heavy. Sorry about this. All right. One thing that I noticed right away was when you compare the 2019 data in this tool with the 2008 plan, you notice that basically the numbers for 2002 and 2007 are about an order of magnitude apart for megatons of CO2 equivalents. You notice that for the Cascadia Consulting numbers that we just got 2019, Lake Forest Park emits like, you know, orders of magnitude more. There's something wrong there.
100,000 versus 2.1.
Yeah, isn't that nuts?
Tracy,
There's
that's
a,
exactly what I saw with the numbers, is that there's a multiple order of magnitude error issue somewhere in the numbers, and I
Yes.
can't sort it out yet until we get more numbers from PSE and Seattle City Light.
Right, so this is exactly one of the things I'm going to point out to them, unless we resolve this, which is why I want to send the material to you guys, because you're better readers than I am. So my point is that somewhere in there is going to be the resolution of this problem. I am sure that somebody's got units wrong somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not documented and it's not transparent as to exactly where or which units are wrong.
Right. Okay, so
So-
that's the first thing. So can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so in any case, their methodologies are different too. And I'm going to point that we need to compare apples to apples. So maybe we shouldn't be using our 2008 CAP report to compare against the 2020 thing. So, you know, there's that. All right, next slide. All right, so because I'm talking to a big King County audience, got to point out the Lake Forest Park is unique in several ways, right? Specifically, we don't have industry, we have a small population, and we're pretty wealthy. All right, so go to the next slide. This is what the Power BI tool looks like. It provides basically visualizations of various kinds of data, sliced however you like it. I just grabbed one that basically has as a percentage what our emissions are coming from. Okay. And there's a whole methodology behind that, what they got all here. And
Is
so
Is
ahead.
this Lake Forest Parks?
this is specifically Lake Forest Park. And we have,
32% comes from aviation?
yes, because they use a per capita in King County use of airline modified by the wealth of the community. So in other words, wealthier communities use air travel more. That's the assumption they're making.
Okay.
We can argue about this point, but that's the baseline model they've got. Yeah. All right. So the point is basically, you know, the proposal is shrink this circle by 1/3 to 1/2, right? Okay, by 2030. And so my point that I'm going to make is that look at our electricity contributions, 0% quite literally, because we use Seattle City Light. Nothing that we do in terms of solar will make any difference whatsoever. And I'm driving home this point because if you go to the next slide, if you would, we've only got certain levers we can pull then, right? These are some of the things that Jeff and I thought of, Jeff Perigo and I thought of. And, you know, and I know you guys know a lot more levers we could probably pull, but these are the biggies that we thought we could kind of look at. All right, so if you go to the next slide, we start pulling the levers. This is what the wedged analysis tool looks like. It's basically this huge dashboard. You got a bunch of different legends. The legend at the top on the upper left shows what the wedge on the middle of the page looks what all those colors mean, right? So there's contributions by, of course, transportation, waste, blah, blah. Okay. The legend down at the bottom are the levers. Those are basically various actions cities can take. You can't read it on this because it's freaking small. In the middle, under the wedge diagram, are basically that's where the tool is the most useful. You can change the percentage by which your city is going to cut or try to implement certain policies, like electrifying new buildings or whatever, right? And the idea is that there's percentages attached in each of those dark columns in the center that you can change the percentage from 0 to whatever percentage you like. And the idea is that you're trying to hit the goals. It's like a video game at this point. All right, so go to the next slide if you would. So you've got emissions targets 40% by 2030, 70% by 2040, so forth. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and that's basically, if you look at any vertical part of that wedge diagram, that's a year. So I've got 2019 marked, which is their baseline year, and 2030 marked. And you can see that basically on our current trajectory, it would be the upper slope of that line above the dark green area. So by doing these various colored actions, like green, medium green, blue, we can knock it down to that red line. And there's like this further little green area under there that we could do. These are all federally and state mandated things, so they have to happen anyway. So that's our given. So that gray area is what we got to deal with as a city and as basically people. All right. So in other words, to meet our targets, which is that lower red line, we need to basically do the gray bit. And what is the gray bit? Those are the levers that I was talking about. All right, so let's look at one of the levers. Go ahead to the next slide. So what we got here is basically new building electrification, right? That came up. And so all new buildings can't have natural gas. They must be electrified. All right, and what I did was in that first, that circled red row there, that's where you get to put in the percentages. So I'm going to cut basically the amount of electricity new buildings are going to use, or cut the emissions that the new buildings are going to produce by 40% by 2030, 70% by 2040, 100% by 2050. All right, so let's see what happens. Next slide. Okay, so you can't see it. It's this tiny blue wedge between those two red arrows. Okay, so the point is, we build 15 new buildings a year in this city. So electrifying new buildings is trivial. All right, let's try the next one. How about if we basically go for something unreasonable, electrifying existing buildings and reducing their energy usage by the same percentages, 40, 70, and 100. 100's unrealistic, right? Because buildings got to use power, but let's do it. Now you got this big freaking large blue wedge, right? Which is about half of that gray area that we need to deal with, okay? All right, go to the next one. This one, I didn't have enough time to basically get the slide together, but this basically showed the effect of solar. If we got literally 100,000 kilowatt hours in solar in 2050, it would be trivial. It basically changes not a bit because Seattle City Light already provides clean energy. So my point is basically this is how the tool is useful, is that you can start pulling levers and start adjusting percentages of how much the target you're going to try to meet, and actually see how we can get to that lower red line, which is the ultimate counting goal for us. And so I think that's where we can basically start engaging people, because once you have a tool that you can actually start plugging in your own numbers and doing your own actions, they feel, you know, at least I felt more ownership over this whole thing. Yeah.
Well, so also, you know, so we're supposed to be talking about like what actions we can take, right? And that's the subcommittee that I have, and I have this initial PowerPoint, but this is you know, more useful. I mean, in some ways, right? This is actually providing us the information on which of those actions we should actually be listing and focusing and spending more time flushing out, and how we can make those things happen. And so I'm confused. So you're presenting this just in terms of how to use the tool? What's the presentation that you're giving?
Well, it's even more specific. How is Lake Forest Park going to use the tool? Right. So like I said, basically, if we had industry or commercial, then I'd be having a completely different conversation with you guys, but we don't. So my point is that Corey, can you go back to that circle diagram at the very beginning?
And is this something you had to pay for?
No, this is all paid for already. We paid for it with our taxes.
Two counties.
This is
right?
all the
So
Power
all
BI of the K4C data.
Right.
Cost.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so my point is this, is that basically the discussion that we have to have as this committee is, if we're going to try to hit those key county targets, how are we going to make this circle smaller? It's almost impossible. I you know, in my cursory 24 hours with the tool, I tried a lot of different things, and you know, the thing that annoys me is that purple region, that tiny little purple region there, that's both wastewater, the waste stream and stormwater. And my belief is that there's another tool that's attached to this UFC. It's called the consumption-based greenhouse gas emissions. That's that whole cradle to grave product cycle thing, right? Buying the new iPhone, that thing. I think that purple thing needs to be way bigger, but this is what's called the geographic-based model. So it's about what Lake Forest Park within its boundary does. So all that manufacturing and stuff, make stuff isn't included in this diagram. My belief is that we have a much better shot of basically reaching our goals if they include the consumption-based stuff, which they don't in this diagram. So that's my issue with
Is
this.
that available to you?
It is available. You guys will have access to it. Yeah, it's another Excel spreadsheet, fancy one, but it's only county level. It's not city level.
So Tracy, this is exactly the concern that the data team has had from day one, and the reason that we've been trying to generate our own understanding of the constituent parts of the carbon footprint of our community and coming up with data that we can actually use and track. And a part of this is if we go back to the discussion Wolfgang provided about which tier of gas of carbon footprint are you looking at, and what is the bound of your question. Our concern is that since Lake Forest Park is very different from other communities, that when we use county averages, we end up with weird outputs that put controlling our carbon footprint outside of our possible control, because it includes county averages that are outside of our possible control.
Is it the data or is it what's available in this program? Just circle. You have the data or
It's
is it?
It's a combination. So I'm very interested in looking at the data, and I'm very interested in looking at whether or not we can improve upon it.
Right, and the Excel spreadsheets all have multiple tabs. I have only explored like the first two because there's a lot of density of stuff in here. So
There will be, yes.
yeah, I want to turn it to you guys because basically having a bunch of eyes on it is obviously going to be better. So yeah.
So you're-
Off-road equipment in Lake Forest Park.
Yeah. Well, that's basically leaf blowers, gas mowers, that kind of thing.
Well, and that's, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a, okay, great, electrifying leaf blowers and lawnmowers. I mean, I'm having trouble with that being 6%, but anyway, details will follow.
Right. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to present this quickly to you guys tonight, because I'm going to just dump it on you and just give you a little context as to how I'm going to be using it and stuff. Yeah.
Thank you for presenting it.
Can we go to that meeting? Can we hear you?
Yeah, you can certainly attend. It's a public meeting. I think they only enable the elected officials microphones, so you can be silent observers, but yeah,
We would very much like to do that.
yeah, make sure you get the invitation.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Appreciate that.
Sure. Oh, and if you have any comments about basically as you look at this stuff, remember, we have until the, I think I have to turn in my PowerPoints on the 11th. So, the more comments that I get and can incorporate, I've got 15 minutes basically. So I'm trying to be as dense as possible. So I'm limiting myself to 15 slides, I think, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So is this like what you guys would be doing at the November event? Have they comments?
Okay, well, the only reason I presented this was to give you an idea of what you might want to do, right? I mean, you don't have to do this at all. I just wanted to show you what sorts of data were available through the King County tools. And so, just one possibility.
I mean, we wanted you to do something where you say, here's where we are now, here's where we want to be, here's the numbers. So we want something, but whether or not how we use what we have here is based on
Right.
how valuable, how comprehensive we think it is.
Right, and until we fundamentally be able to, we don't have, this is one data point, right? So unless we get the 2008 data to somehow be able to explain how that could fit with this, we don't have a time series.
We may not be able to measure.
I know, and we may not be able to, that's completely possible.
And it may not matter anyway, because we know over time we have to reduce.
Right,
So
right.
that's basically what we're looking for.
But that's why I wanted the data committee to look at the King County tool to make sure that we kind of agree with what their methodology is.
But your comment about where things come from, the energy used to produce the things that you use.
Could you please speak towards the
Sorry.
screen over here? All I'm hearing is,
So the point that Tracy made earlier about knowing the resources that go into everything that we use, that's not part of this, is very important. Because we are a consumption world, and if we can reduce that and our mindset about that, it's big. One other thing, so I've seen the Mac Compare presentation like a couple times. And one of the things he does say is the stuff that's mandated by the feds, it's not a given that that's gonna happen. It's gonna require people to get on board. And so part of our job with Lake Forest Park is gonna be to get them on board with what's happening at the federal level. And hopefully once we get sort of the ball rolling, that it'll be easier to get people to continue to change. So that's kind of how I.
That's a great one.
Right. But you
So by when are we gonna have so I guess the information, Sarah, that you want to prevent it, and that's November 12th, is that right?
Yeah.
So at our next committee meeting, are we gonna have all of the information that's available that we want to compile to then present?
Well, one would hope, otherwise we'll just fly by the seat of our pants. But my notion is, this is too technical for people. What we need to say to people is, what we know about Lake Forest Park is you shouldn't drive so much and we should get rid of natural gas. If we push those two levers, I mean, I don't see us.
we should insulate our houses.
Insulate our houses. But, you know, I'm not telling people in Lake Forest Park they shouldn't fly, because I don't know that that'll go anywhere. But we could say that typically, I mean, so we can, I think we just want, this is what, I think we want to give people a more general picture of what, I think we have to assume that people aren't as smart as we are. And I feel like I'm not very smart, but so it has to be imaginal, and sort of what are the kinds of things where this notion of levers is, I think, an important one. That so I think this might be too technical, but
Right, but Sarah, your point is well taken, though. Yeah, we do have to basically make it very clear that, especially the anti-intuitive results, like pulling the lever of solar doesn't do anything. That's what most people would say.
Well, it does something.
Yeah.
It just doesn't do
This, right.
So,
And so I think there is
So we
good
got,
things about solar.
Right.
We need,
yeah, we've got to work on the messaging there to be clear about which goal we're trying to
Yeah,
reach, right? Because
that's
there's several
right.
different goals. Yeah.
right.
Well, that was gonna be my question too, because I mean, you know, if we're gonna include this aviation piece, for example, we don't necessarily have to tell people that they're gonna change, but making them aware of how that contributes, right, to
Right.
greenhouse gases. And so what are the alternatives? So let's just, you know, be provocative and try to get some light bulbs to go off, right? I mean, so it's more about that, like, oh, I didn't know that. You know, I know that there are a number of people that we talked to at the park who said, well, I'd love to put in a heat pump, but I just switched to natural gas, you know, 5-8 years ago or whatever, because we thought that that was better, you know, so, and I don't have the money to, you know, spend another $30,000 to switch.
well, the other point that I'd make is, and I think this is one of the catch-22 aspects of using the K4C data. You could have every single citizen in Lake Forest Park agree to not fly in an airplane next year. And K4C would run our numbers and come up with the same contribution for aviation, because we're going to be assigned the county average based on the county average and the prosperity of our community. This is an assumed value. This isn't a real value. This is a prorated value. And there's nothing we can do to change what that is in the K4C model. It's outside of our control entirely,
But-
whereas other
Yeah.
aspects of this are within our control. And I appreciate the whole concept of developing a model so that we can see which levers we have and what we can work with. But this is why I've always been a little cautious about simply assuming the K4C model would be helpful for us, because it will have some innate inherent biases that are outside of our control.
So I think that goes back to, so what is our goal, and what are we going to measure change and difference by in Lake Forest Park? And does it have to be, I mean, Tracy just sort of said it doesn't have to be this, I guess, but according to the commitment with K4C, I thought it did. So I guess I'm a little confused about that.
Well, and this is where we'll have to, discuss further, but this is exactly why the data team is looking at what can we measure. For example, we can measure the number of cars that use internal combustion engines at different points in time, and the electrification of our residential fleet, if you will, not just the municipal, but the residential fleet. That counts. So this is, I think this is going to be a work in progress. I'm just delighted that we have something to start with now, and I'm very much looking forward to diving into those spreadsheets tab by tab.
Excellent. So the meeting next month is on what date? Are we in the 1st? The 1st of November?
I believe that's November 1st. Let's double check.
Yeah.
I have November 1st, 7 o'clock.
Great.
Back to Tuesday.
And Tracy, I understand that after this meeting, we'll receive the information from K4C. Our data team will likely want to follow up directly with you at some point in the near future.
Happy to attend whenever you guys meet, as long as it's not during a council meeting or something. Yeah.
It won't be. And we may have some interim discussion with you just to get some some interim pieces in order. Our next meeting of the data team is the Monday the 24th at 4 o'clock.
Sounds good.
And if you could hold that open for us, I'd appreciate it. And if you cannot attend, then please let me know. But I expect we'll have sort of a short session in between, just to get up to speed and to focus in on certain elements that we're currently working on.
Should be no problem.
Thank you very, very much. Other discussion, again, we're at the old new business part of the agenda. So if there's other new business coming up, Tamara.
Yeah, so I spoke to Rebecca Rivera. She's the Shoreline president of the board, and she was very interested in meeting with us. So the Shoreline School District is developing their own climate action plan, and they're at the early stages as well. And they would love to see how we can work together so that our plans align. And
That
so
would be fantastic.
yeah, so they also meet on Tuesdays, but she said they are not meeting January 3rd. It's the first Tuesday in that month. So she said that she could come and talk to us on that date.
January 3rd, 2023.
Mhm.
Fantastic. So let's put that in as a tentative meeting with Rebecca Rivera of Shoreline School District to discuss synergy with our climate action planning.
Great. I'll let her know. And then I have one more thing.
Does anyone object to doing that? Just locking that in now. I think that's fantastic. Great way to kick off a new year.
And then also, and I was talking to some of our community members this last weekend, the Sheridan Beach community group recently was given a presentation about the 522 expansion, and that there are going to be 500 trees in Lake Forest Park that would need to be cut down. I was wondering if that's something that anyone else in this group knows about, or if that's something that we should talk about as a group at a future meeting.
There were 35 citizen comments at the last city council meeting on that topic alone. So you are not alone. Yeah, Sound Transit has a lot to answer.
So that was based on the documentation of the Sound Transit.
Yes,
So the
yeah,
500.
and if you'd like to see this information that Sound Transit gave out, go to the last city council regular business meeting. And they gave a presentation towards the beginning of the meeting, so around, something like 7 o'clock or so. So yeah, take a look at that, because yeah, some of their information was interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there something we can do about it?
Again, it's supporting, well, first of all, listen to the folks that are talking about this problem, find out the scope of it, and then pressure Sound Transit however you can by attending their public meetings, and public comment times, and basically demanding that they replace trees with trees that are similar. We're not going to wait 40 years for these trees, the trees they want to provide to grow up.
Okay. Additional new business?
I wanted to follow up about the meeting with the Kenmore deputy mayor, and there were some questions that we had asked of her, and she had suggested, getting in touch with the city manager. And I didn't know if that was something that somebody was following up on, and I don't have a list of the questions, but it seemed like there was a lot of good discussion and potentially additional information that we could get from their city manager.
Yeah, no one volunteered to take that on personally, and I, along with, I think you, had not one free minute this last month. So,
Yeah.
So I do not believe anybody has moved forward on that. What I would suggest is we actually stand down on that until we have a chance to review the K4C information. And then we pull our questions together, informed by this new planning tool. Because I do think there is good information. I agree that the city manager is the appropriate person to ask.
Okay, thanks.
I also had some thoughts about her presentation, because I guess I hadn't understood that they passed the climate action plan, which was a package of recommendations, but nothing had really been done about it yet, because they were waiting for the city to basically find the funding to hire people to implement the recommendations, which was a little bit surprising for me that, it seems like an accomplishment to pass a climate action plan, but if you don't have any plan for how it's going to be funded, then I just want to make sure that doesn't happen to us, that we're like thinking about, if we're going to make recommendations to the city, or, I think, you've mentioned that we're kind of going with the community outreach approach, but I just wanted to make sure I understood that we're still keeping everything on the table, or what our plan is.
So Matt, everything we're doing is kind of informed by the failure of Proposition 1 last year also. And part of the reason that the community outreach is so important is that we can't get things done if the community don't want to do them. And to the degree that things cost money, the community has to agree to pay for them. So there's a chicken and egg issue. We can have great plans, but if the community doesn't want to implement those plans, they won't be implemented. And some things don't cost money, but some things do. And some things take a fair amount of work. Adding a bike lane is non-trivial. Adding a sidewalk is non-trivial.
Yeah, I guess if before I joined, everyone had gotten together and said, okay, here's all the ways that we could, try to get funding for anything, and they're all non-starters, and so we're only going with community outreach. Like nobody told me that, so I just wanted to make sure that we're where we are. Do we have a roadmap, and where are we on that roadmap?
Wasn't one of her comments that there needs to be a person hired by the city to actually implement the plan that gets come up, right? Because we're not going to be here forever. We hand off something to the city, and then there needs to be a person in the city government hired to do climate work or environment work. I heard that resonated big time as something that we may never see.
And that was a conclusion of the 2008 plan too, was put in there that unless you have a way of moving forward with these plans, you have to stick on it or it get disappeared like the 2008 plan.
So maybe that needs to be part of our education and outreach.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I just want to say that there was not an arborist for a long time until people got very concerned about trees and insisted on a new tree ordinance, and that you couldn't have an ordinance without an implementation. So there is possibility of, raising that with the community. Enough with, but I think the piece of it is people need to see it as urgent and important to them.
Yeah, well, I guess back to Matt's question. I mean, our charge, our mandate is to develop a climate action plan to present to the city council.
Exactly.
And so it's not to do community outreach and to educate people about climate action. I mean, we're doing the survey and gathering that information to see what's important so that we can hopefully focus our plan around things that we think are, at least that there are some things that can maybe get implemented faster than others. And maybe it's a tiered plan. We think these things are low hanging fruit and the community is really supportive and can be, implemented immediately. And then this is going to take more like 5 to 10 years or, whatever that is. And not maybe that long, but that is our charge. I mean, that is the charge we have been given. I think a large task for a community group with no paid consultants like they did in Kenmore. They paid people lots of money to help them, but the deputy mayor also, for those people who weren't there, I can't remember how long ago that was, they didn't, it wasn't as supported by the community. She actually didn't feel like it was supported by the community because there wasn't as much community involvement. So she was actually, commending the city of Lake Forest Park for having it be citizen driven. We'll see how that pans out, I guess.
I'm going to go back to Hans and Bella.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, and this is off topic, but I have a meeting at 9 and I'm supposed to open up and start the call for that. And I was wondering if I was allowed to if it was procedure or anything, or if I could just head out.
What I'd like to do actually is thank you very much. It is 9 o'clock and I think we have covered everything in our agenda. So
Adios.
Close the meeting.
Let's adjourn.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, Anne.
We're now adjourned. Bella, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
That's been something that's been weighing on